Graham Newton and Kat Stapleton. Good to go? All right, fantastic. Look, here we are at Cross River Rail, an absolutely awesome project. We've got 15 different sites, 10.2 kilometres of new underground rail tunnel through the heart of the CBD, past the Gabba, first station in the CBD in 120 years at Albert Street, a full-time Ecoline, connections at Roma Street, 3 stations on the Gold Coast, 4 new underground stations, and of course big station accessibility refurbishments from the Eka station and also Dutton Park all the way to Salisbury. This project is going to be transformational for public transport in southeast Queensland, and we're here today at the Gabba station outside the famous cricket ground where a fantastic new station is going to come out. It's already coming out of the ground. In fact, we're building basically a 10-storey building from about 8 stories down, and people take the escalators, be able to go into the platform above Main Street at Kangaroo Point, straight into the stadium. So if you just imagine that if you're somebody who doesn't move around so well anymore, you'll be able to go to a station, get the lift there, go straight into the train, get out here at a fully accessible station and go at level into the Gabba. This is going to change the city in such a massive way. It's been an essential part of our Olympic bid to be able to get people in and out of the Olympic Stadium easily. And of course, it's not just about the Games. This station will be open at the end of 2025, so we're only 3 years away. And it's getting even more real today because we're seeing the rail has now been laid on the 2 tunnels underneath the Brisbane River from Albert Street Station to the Gabba Station is in place. It's the first of a whole lot of sections of the rail being laid over the next 12 months, but to see these space-age tunnels with the rail in place, it's a phenomenal image to see, and it's going to change how we move around here in southeast Queensland. So I want to thank the Cross River Rail team. They're doing a fantastic job. 2,700 workers on this project at the moment across 15 different sites. This is one of the biggest sites, and as you can see with the rail going down, it's at the leading edge in terms of getting that in place. So a lot more work to do, there's no doubt about that, but the tunnelling is done. The fit-outs are advancing very well. The mezzanines, the big concrete pours, they're getting through them really well. This project is awesome. So I've got with me Graham Newton, CEO of Cross River Rail Delivery Authority. He'll say a few words. And I've also got Kat Stapleton, our CEO of Queensland Rail. It's great to see the agencies working so closely together on this transformational project for this whole region. Graham.
Thanks, Minister. First of all, thanks everyone for coming out on Sunday. I just want to acknowledge the team from the site for supporting us for today. Last year we built the tunnels underneath the river, and this year we now have rail underneath the river. This is an amazing milestone for the project. This is an amazing milestone for the project to see tunnel for the first time cross Brisbane River since the late 70s. So the team have to be well complimented for this. There are 9,400 low vibration blocks have gone in, and they get concrete poured around them, which then forms the track slab, which then forms this magic rail that we're seeing go under the river. Next will come is the fit out of the tunnels. There'll be a walkway, there'll be mechanical and electrical, the rigid overhead bar will be installed. So there's a lot of work to go, but great to see this milestone happening, and we're working very closely with our colleagues in Queensland Rail and really getting ourselves in a position where not only is the project progressing, but the teams are getting ready for getting what will be a significant change to the way in which rail moves around southeast Queensland. So it's not just about the project, but it's also about the operations. So I might hand over to Kat to say a few words. Kat.
Well, it's certainly a very, very exciting time to be in rail, and Queensland Rail is delighted to be here to celebrate this very special milestone. Working closely with the Cross Rail Delivery Authority, with TransLink, we're expanding the network and making, ultimately, public transport more accessible, easier to use for our customers and the people for Queensland. So, very excited to be here and looking forward to the next milestones. Thank you.
Just while you're there, can I just ask you a quick question? Compared with what the kind of rail system that we have now, Queensland Rail has now, how much will Cross River Rail change the amount of connections people, or how easy it is to move around the city?
Well, this is absolutely transformational, and it's going to be very, very significant changes to the way we operate. I'm very, very much looking forward to our customers experiencing this. Today, we carry customers all around Southwest Queensland and up north as well. With this, there will be absolute transformational changes, easier to access for everybody, and much shorter trips as well. So, can't wait.
Can I ask a question? Well, the Minister announced a couple of months ago some changes to the way the lines are going to operate when Cross River Rail opens. Have you received any customer feedback around how customers have received the new lines? Are they happy with it, or are they not happy with it?
Well, so far so good, and people are quite excited about the new network composition. It's going to be a few years before we move into that type of three-sector one, but so far I'm also a user on the Gold Coast line, and I can't wait to be using and getting through the tunnel as well.
Any questions? Questions? That's the most quiet time I've ever had at a press conference.
Well, you covered it all so well in your opening statement. There's some new allegations surrounding the Mackay-based hospital today. The opposition is saying that the Health Minister, your colleague, is missing in action on some of these issues. Do you think that's a fair criticism?
Not at all. The Health Minister has regularly stood up and answered questions about this matter. It's a very serious matter. She has a total confidence of the full government.
What details do you have about the Mackay surgery doctor race movements?
Well, you appreciate I'm the Minister for Transport and Main Roads. I'm not the Health Minister, but I understand that the doctor in question has been suspended and the matter is under full investigation, as is appropriate. There are appropriate controls and processes in place. We should let them happen without any interference from people like me or other people. We've got one of the best health systems in the world, but there are controls in there, and we should let them play themselves out.
Why was he allowed to work in Mackay when there were serious allegations that he'd been involved in misconduct in WA?
Well, I understand there's an investigation underway, so I think it would be highly inappropriate for me to be offering an opinion or comment on it when I'm certainly not the Health Minister, but that matter was under full investigation, as is appropriate.
Do you know if he's on full pay while he's been suspended?
You would have to ask Queensland Health about the specifics there, but there is an investigation. The doctor in question has been suspended, as is appropriate.
You touched on this being really integral, just back to kind of Cross River Rail,
Yeah.
Olympics, the Gabba, about this being a really integral part of people moving around the 2032 Olympics. What will happen if the Gabba is no longer the main Olympics venue and this is, the main station is really focused around Woolloongabba?
Look, it's a very hypothetical question because the Gabba is the Olympic Stadium and it will be the Olympic Stadium. It's been part of the bid. It's locked and loaded, and look, it's already a world-famous cricket ground. Any cricket fan knows where the Gabba is and knows what a great ground it is. This is a great opportunity to refit it or to rebuild it, whichever is the most economic. That work is being done as is appropriate. This is the planning and preparation time to get all those things right. The Olympics are 10 years away, and this is the stage where all those sorts of things need to be fully explored, and that's the appropriate way to do it.
Can I ask you about, you responded this last week around the proposal around Elizabeth Line. Have you put any thought into renaming other stations, like Central Station and other stations, when the Cross River Rail opens?
Look, we will need to look at the system to make sure legibility is absolutely clear and easy for commuters. So we'll be looking at a range of those sorts of things, and to make sure that anybody who's either new to the system or is from overseas or interstate can get around the system really easily. So, for instance, one issue that we will look at is Park Road, Bogger Road. At the moment, we've got a busway station right next to the rail station. They're called different things, and then we'll have an additional platform there. So, should we call that the one thing? That's something for us to consider. Looking at the new stations, how they fit into the system, we'll be looking at that in depth, and also involving the community, because they should have a view on this as well.
What about Grand Central Station for Roma Street? Do you like that idea?
Look, I am not a fan of mimicking something named somewhere else. I think we're better than that. I think we can name things that are uniquely Queensland, uniquely Brisbane. I think that's the appropriate way to go. It shows confidence in the community and the culture that you're in. And I think mimicking other sort of systems is it's not a favourite of mine, to put it that way.
The Queensland Health Inquiry, or with the inquiry into Queensland Health's DNA bundle, are you concerned about what the inquiry will reveal?
Look, there's no doubt that this is a very serious matter. The interim report from Mr. Sofronoff is being acted upon by all agencies, and I think people absolutely support that work being done. I know Mr. Sofronoff will complete the final report as early as he's possibly able to do, and the government will consider that full report when it's put forward. The work he's done has been thorough and extensive, and we're doing everything we can as a government to fully respond to the situation, and it is a very serious matter.
Miles has said that he didn't know about the changes to DNA thresholds. Is that acceptable as being Health Minister?
Look, I think it's fair to say that when you're a minister, you're not necessarily aware of every part of a massive system that's operational. So I have absolute faith in the Deputy Premier. He has a very strong record, both in his current portfolios and his previous portfolios. So, this sort of nasty and negative sort of approach from the LNP. They seem to want us. They love sacking. They did a lot of that when they were in power. They sacked 14,000 people, including nearly 2,000 nurses. They pick fights with doctors. It's just it's unfortunate that they're politicising the situation.
Do you know if the government's looking at re-examining their double jeopardy laws in light of this issue?
Look, this is a matter for the Attorney General. I'm not a lawyer, I'll be quite frank with you, so this is a complex matter. That question is best given to the Attorney General. It's very much a complex legal issue.
Do you have a view on that though? John Bush has expressed a view on what should happen. Do you have a view yourself on what should happen?
Look, I'd certainly read in depth and thoroughly any submission that comes to Cabinet, and it is a serious matter. But at this stage, I don't have a particular view on it. Look, Jonty has got a very particular personal circumstance. It's appropriate that she should have a view on that. Look, I'm not a lawyer. I'll look at whatever submission comes in from the Attorney General and Justice Department and consider it on its merits.
Do you think Cabinet should discuss the particular circumstances when ministers should be briefed on changes? Stephen Miles says that this was a change that didn't make it all the way up to the chain to him, but obviously in retrospect it was a change that had major implications. So should there be clearer guidelines about the sorts of seemingly minor changes in departments that ministers are briefed on?
Well, look, I'll avoid the hypotheticals, but I'll say this, is that there's an interim report that we're acting on swiftly across agencies, and that's appropriate. We will fully act and act on and consider the final report as it comes down. But look, I don't want to get into answering hypotheticals. I think when problems occur in systems and departments, and when they're identified, they should be addressed and acted on, and that's what we're doing.
Will the government consider extending or increasing funding for support services for victim survivors of sexual abuse while all of this plays out?
Sorry, increase funding for...
Will you be increasing funding for support services for victim survivors while all of this plays out?
Look, I'm not briefed on that, but I'm sure that our agencies are looking at how they support people. The individual ministers or departments will probably be able to respond to that more specifically.
Just briefly on Mackay again, when are we going to see that report into the obstetrics unit at Mackay?
The Queensland Health should be able to give some more specific advice on that now.
Can I just ask Graham a couple more cross-river rail questions?
Yeah, sure.
If everyone wants to be done.
Yeah?
Cool.
Go for it, Georgie. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Graham.
Oh, Graham, sorry, I didn't hear the Graham bit. Go for it.
Thank you.
I'm happy.
So Graham, can you just walk us through, I guess, how what we've seen today forms as part of the bigger picture for Cross River Rail, and I guess are we seeing more trucks laid in other tunnels like this, that kind of stuff?
Okay, so this is the first section of the Cross River Rail Tunnel where the tracks have been laid. Already work has started on the other sections of the tracks across the whole project, but this is the first one. So it's exciting to see the level of progress, and when the tracks go down, it makes it real. It makes it gives that really solid feel that we're talking about a rail tunnel, and then really the next technical, intricate bits that come next.
And what are those bits that come next?
So what we'll see is some installation of mechanical and electrical components. That'll include conduits for power, CCTV. There'll also be fire suppressant pipes will go through. There'll be a walkway for both maintenance as well as safety. And then there'll be a rigid overhead bar will go in for when the trains go through. So there's a lot of fit out still to go, but these tracks really give us a good signal as to what's to come.
When do you do test runs?
So when the construction work is completed, it then moves into a whole safety cycle, and there'll be a range of testing. So it sort of happens over a period of time. Most of the physical construction work will be completed in around about 2024, but progressively what we'll be doing is testing the components as we move through. So it's a slow escalation where you will test the electricals, you'll test the safety components, test the ventilation systems, and then start to bring trains in, where the trains will run through in a very slow way to do the technical testing, and then start to move. So you get to the stage that you have a train moving through at pace, ready for passengers. So that happens over quite a long period of time. We would expect that to be commencing sometime in 2024 through to 2025 period. So it does take quite some time. I know in London it took them almost 2 years of that testing.
And just for clarity, there was an announcement in June of a milestone of the first track being installed.
Yeah.
Is this different?
So in June we announced the track arriving and being brought into the tunnels. We've now laid the tracks, so they're now laid in a configuration ready to take on-rail vehicles. So the previous announcement was the arrival of the track, and now that track is being progressively installed across the full underground component of the project.
When will the northern track work start?
The northern track works have already started. So you're talking about in the tunnel?
Yeah, laying
Yep.
it, yeah.
Yeah, so there's tracks already being laid in the tunnel at the moment. What we see in the tunnel here is those low vibration blocks going into place, and then they pour the concrete around those. What we're seeing in the northern tunnel is those blocks are being put in place. The rail will then be clipped to that block, and then they pour the concrete around it. So watch this space. There'll be more to come as far as those announcements go for the next section. So if you imagine there's from the northern portal to Roma Street is one section, Roma Street to Albert Street is another section, Albert to Woolloongabba, and then Woolloongabba to Boggo Road. So the section between Albert Street and Woolloongabba is the first section. And because it goes under the river, it goes the deepest in the tunnel. And so I guess that's a little bit of the tricky bit, where it goes down and has curvature into it. So it's great to get this out of the way and get this milestone completed.
Across the 15 sites, how are you dealing with the increasing or the rise in construction costs of materials?
Yeah. So we've been monitoring. I mean, over the last 12 months, we've seen impacts in the construction sector right across the board as far as escalation goes. But also earlier this year we had the flood, and then we've seen supply chain impacts from the likes of the war in Ukraine. So we're watching that very closely, working very closely with our contractors at the moment. And you know, this project isn't immune to those, but we're looking to manage those costs as effectively as we can.
Does that mean the budget's increased?
As I said, we're going through the project, working with our contractors to monitor the progress there. And really, that's the sort of thing that we're going to monitor as the project moves through these next phases.
Are you concerned about this year's potential for flooding?
Let me be clear, in the floods in earlier this year, there was only surface impacts on the site. There was no impacts on the tunnels whatsoever. We monitor the Bureau of Meteorology forecasts. The sites have very good responses when it comes to rain, and we saw that put into place earlier this year. What you do, though, is you do get disruption with rain. Obviously, it does interrupt supply chain, it does interrupt activity on site, but the way the team responded last year or earlier this year in the flooding was impressive. It was outstanding, and we were able to keep the project moving.
Minister, can I ask you on that point, have you been given any indication that the cost could go beyond 5.4 billion, or any concerns that relate to that it could?
Well, the advice to date is that it is on time and on budget, but we are monitoring the impact of the market on the project. So that is being looked at and examined. We've always said that. And of course, with 15 different sites, that's actually not a simple equation. It's a complex piece of work. So we are looking at that, and we'll see how we progress. There's certainly been a lot of pressure on construction projects, public and private, right across the state and across the country at the moment.
So it is a possibility it could go beyond that $5.4 billion.
Yeah, well, we are looking at it methodically, and it is a matter, obviously, that we need to monitor, and that's what we're doing.
If construction costs have increased and you want to stay within budget, I mean, if you're not going to pay more, then what are you going to cut services, or like how are you juggling that? If construction costs have increased, how would you keep the budget of the project the same?
Look, that's a hypothetical, but look, I think it's pretty clear that we are 100% committed to this project. You know, it was cut by the Newman government. It was promised to be cut again by the LNP in the 2017 election. You can see around me just how transformational and fundamental this project is for the future of Brisbane and southeast Queensland. We are delivering this project against fierce opposition at the time, and I think people are really understanding just how important and how visionary it was for us to get this project done. You know, we're now kind of roughly about 2/3 of the way through, with still a significant amount of work to go, and we are committed to seeing this project through to its opening, and I think people are going to be incredibly impressed when they take the tunnel to the Gabba, get out in the middle of Albert Street, walk up to the Queen Street Mall, only a block away, when they can use the Ecker station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I think people are going to be pretty impressed.
So basically, if the construction costs do rise significantly, the government will find a way to pay for it.
Look, that matter is we're monitoring it, but we are 100% committed to this project. There's no going backwards. I think that's pretty clear. There's no going backwards on a project that we have seen a huge amount of engineering and work. We'll see it through to the end. It is a fantastic project. I've called it an awesome project many times in Parliament, and it really is. Anyone who's been on site, anyone who sees the pictures, can see just this is something Brisbane and southeast Queensland has never ever seen before.
When will we have an understanding of when we have an understanding if the costs are going beyond budget?
Well, look, that's a matter for the Cross River Rail Delivery Authority. They are examining the impacts of market on the project. We've got literally thousands of contractors and subcontractors, so it's not an overnight sort of process. It's one you've got to do thoroughly, and they're doing that.
When did the process of examining the cost blowout begin?
Look, I think it's been underway for a little while, but it's a very complex and thorough process involving, when you're looking at a project that costs $5.4 billion, you've got 15 different sites, you've got thousands of subcontractors. It's a pretty big piece of work.
You know, this will likely expose you to the tax from the LNP over costing. Does that concern you at all when it comes to?
Oh, look, listening to the LNP on public transport, their performances have been embarrassing. You know, they cut this project to begin with. They cut train drivers who own their own power. They ordered trains from overseas that were not disability compliant. I mean, they botched public transport every time they touched it. They still promised to cut this project only 5 years ago as an election promise. So they just don't understand public transport because they don't take it. This government understands that a good transport system means a strong public transport system. That's why we're doing Cross River Rail. It's why we're doing light rail on the Gold Coast. It's why we're doing a double track duplication from Currabee to Beenleigh. It's why we're doing a track duplication on the Sunshine Coast. And we're doing smart ticketing because we understand that you can't just, while roads are important and we've got record levels of funding going into roads, right across Queensland, you also need a strong public transport system. And that's what you always get from the Palaszczuk Labor government, as opposed to the cuts ideology of David Crisafulli and the LNP, who never changed on that.
Thank you.
Can I just ask quickly, you mentioned all the tracks have arrived. How exposed are you in terms of materials?
Sorry?
How exposed are you at this stage? I mean, obviously so much has been done, the tracks are already here.
So,
what do you think the capacity is?
Look, there's been a lot of pre-purchase. The tracks have been purchased. There's contracts that are in place. So really, we're in a good place for the project, and we're very impressed with the way in which the contractors are performing. So things like rail and steel they've been managed or pre-purchased in a lot of environments. So really, everything that can be done is being done, and as would normally be done on a major project of this scale. So very sensible, methodical approach is being taken, but we can't be naive to what's going on in the marketplace, and that's what happens with every one of these projects, regardless whether it was done 10 years ago and projects that will be done 10 years in the future. They will always be done where you take a methodical, judged approach and pre-purchase, lock in prices, try and give as much security as you can on a project like this. What we're doing is the same practice.
Could it be hundreds of millions of dollars in extra?
I don't think that's appropriate. It's hypothetical what you're talking about.
You don't know yet.
Thanks, everybody.
I might just get a photo.